Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your afternoon to learn about call tracking metrics. I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the CTM platform today and highlight some of the features that we can provide. My name's Jason Smith, and by the end of this session, I hope that you're going to have a good understanding of the core capabilities that CTM has to offer, which components of CTM align with your immediate goals and objectives, and hopefully have a few new ideas or ways that you might be able to leverage CTM for better data or streamlined processes around handling your business communications. So let's talk a little bit about who CTM is. We were founded in 2012 by a husband and wife co-founder team, Todd and Lori Fisher. We're independently owned and operated with no outside investors. We've got a great team culture here with heavy focus on nurturing employees and supporting their professional development. That's led to a very low turnover and a very highly qualified team here to support our customers. Of those customers, there are about 30,000 of them in over 80 countries around the globe. We provide a healthy calendar of live hands-on user trainings on various relevant topics throughout the month to support this customer base, in addition to our live support representatives here. So let's talk about the CTM value proposition. What does a solution like CallTrackingMetrics bring to the table? We're uniquely positioned in the marketplace with the most comprehensive, if not the only marketing attribution software that also boasts a highly customizable contact center as a service platform on the back end. So not only can we tell you the session or keyword level where your calls are coming from, like some of our competitors in the marketing attribution space, but we can also be the exclusive cutting edge phone system that your team uses to make and receive calls like some of our competitors in the hosted voice over IP vendor space. I find that the happiest customers are the ones that can leverage capabilities on both ends of the spectrum. It's not uncommon for us to start with the marketing attribution use case, and as companies uncover all the additional capabilities of CallTrackingMetrics, we can start to replace other vendors that you're sourcing for some of the services that you'll find under the hood here with CallTrackingMetrics. So with that, I'd like to switch over to our demo account and take a look at what some of this stuff looks like in production. The most common thing that people come to us for is marketing attribution. They want to understand which of their advertising channels is generating phone calls, which of their advertising channels are not generating phone calls, so they can take that data and make intelligent marketing decisions. We achieve that objective by providing a unique tracking number for each different marketing source or lead acquisition channel that you want to measure. So if you look at our by numbers section here, you see that you can quickly search for local or toll-free numbers that fit your advertising objectives, and you can quickly provision these numbers to be accepting calls just about instantly. We also have the ability to port in existing numbers if you've already got some numbers out in your marketing materials and you'd like to leverage these capabilities provided by CTM on those existing numbers. So with the tracking numbers from CallTrackingMetrics, there's just a few parameters that need to be defined before you can use this number. So for the most basic things, for your offline sources, we're going to assign a source label in a receiving number. You'll find most of the common marketing attribution sources pre-configured here for you to choose from, but you can also customize these based on your specific advertising objectives. The next thing that you'll need to provide is a receiving number or some call routing direction. Where do you want us to send a phone call that comes into one of these tracking numbers? The most basic configuration that we can support here is just taking the main number where you typically field your inbound calls and point your tracking numbers to that single receiving number. For your offline advertising, for publications and signs and billboards, this is all you need. As soon as you define these two parameters, we can be receiving calls on these numbers just about right away. So it makes it very easy to come in here and spin up tracking numbers as new advertising initiatives come up. For tracking online visitors, there's another component here that needs to be configured, and that is around our dynamic number insertion capability. So for dynamic number insertion, to identify where your online visitors are coming from before they pick up the phone and dial, CallTrackingMetrics provides a tracking code. It's a single line of JavaScript with this snippet of code in place on your website or on the landing pages where you're routing visitors to. We have the ability to identify where those visitors are coming from. If and only if we detect that the visitor has come from one of these sources that you've configured to track here with CallTrackingMetrics, then that code is going to find and replace what you've defined as the target number. The number that normally appears on your website gets swapped out with our tracking number by the time that page loads for the visitor. So somebody that clicks through from your page from Twitter, instead of this local 410 number, they're going to see this 443 tracking number. Somebody that clicked through to the site from a Google organic search, instead of this 800 number that normally appears on the site, we're going to show them this 410 tracking number. In doing this dynamic number insertion, we are tagging that visitor's browser cookie for a default duration of 30 days, and we're using a first touch attribution model. That means the visitor that comes to the site from a Google organic search today and then clicks through from Twitter tomorrow, we'll be able to recognize them as a repeat visitor, and we're going to show them the same Google organic number that they saw on their first visit. Now, this behavior is customizable. Some companies that have a longer sales cycle may want to extend that cookie duration. We may want to have this Google organic number follow a visitor for 60 or 90 days based on our product's shopping trends. So once we've got these numbers set up and calls start rolling into these tracking numbers, you're going to have the CTM call log. This call log is a stacked chronological view of all the calls that have come in to all of your tracking numbers. In this call log, there's a lot of data that we're automatically collecting around every phone call that comes in. This includes the caller ID information, the unique number that our caller called from, as well as the city, state, and region that that number is associated with. We're going to show you which individual number was dialed along with the source that you've associated to that tracking number. We're going to have a recording available. If you have call recordings turned on, you'll be able to access these for as long as you have an active account. Come back into CallTrackingMetrics, listen to all of the phone calls. This can be an extremely valuable tool to measure and score the performance of your team that's fielding these inbound leads. Make sure that they're capitalizing on every opportunity to close the sale. We also measure the date, the ring time, talk time, overall duration of every phone call. And what is our perceived status? Do we perceive that this call was answered at the other end, or did we ring through to a no answer scenario? In the call routing column, we'll show you which receiving number or which CallTrackingMetrics agent fielded this phone call. In addition to these standard data points that we're providing on every conversation, there's a lot of customization that can be added to this call log. Custom fields around the contact panel or custom score panels for your team to access, whether they're scoring the quality of the leads or the performance of the agents. These can be built out to achieve your specific objectives. So now let's talk about the session data. So as these calls come in from the tracking code that served up a number on the website, there's another data point here in the session data. If we look at this example, Joe Smith that called in from a Google AdWords ad, or called in from Google Ads.
This conference will now be recorded.
Another thing I want to talk about in the call log is the session data. So for those calls that are generated from a number that was served up online through our tracking code, there's some additional parameters that we've been able to pick up here. So every time somebody picks up the phone and dials a number that's been displayed via that dynamic number insertion, There's about 40 different points of session data that we're looking at, including geographically, where's that visitor coming to the site from? What kind of device are they using? What's their IP address? How long did they spend on the site? What pages did they visit where we showed them a tracking number, as well as what other browser cookies were present in their session on our website. So with these 40 different points of session data, there's an algorithm that runs in the background that matches the visitor to their specific phone call in CallTrackingMetrics. We're confident in this matching within a ratio of 1 tracking number for every 20 daily unique visitors that you get from a specific source. So for example, if you had 100 visitors in a day from your Google Ads, then we would recommend that you had 5 tracking numbers to have a very small margin of error in this session matching. With an accurate session match made, combined with our Google integration, we have the ability to bring in this additional advertising data. So we have now matched this call to the specific campaign, ad group, and keyword terms that impacted this or led to this visitor picking up the phone and calling. So all of this data is great for CallTrackingMetrics to have, but it's even better when we have the ability to share this data. So we offer lots of third-party integrations to popular advertising platforms, marketing automation tools, as well as CRMs like Salesforce, Zoho, and Microsoft Dynamics. In addition to these native integrations that we've pre-built some point-and-click options for you, we also have our open API, a webhooks integration, and a Zapier integration that opens us up to literally hundreds of other integration capabilities. By far and away, the most popular integration that we offer is the Google Analytics and Google Ads integration. So the way that this works is once your account is linked with your Google Analytics account, our default behavior is to send a call event for every call that comes into a tracking number as an offline event into Google Analytics. With those events that we send into Google Analytics, we're going to take some of the data that we know about the caller and apply that to the Google Analytics event fields. You'll be able to take those events that we've sent into Google Analytics and build goals around those events. If your CallTrackingMetrics call event meets certain criteria, for example, if it's a first-time caller and the call is more than 30 seconds, then you can have that goal in analytics complete and send that call event into Google Ads as a call conversion. Today, that's the way that we make the 3 platforms, CallTrackingMetrics, Google Analytics, and Google Ads for your on-site PPC, talk and communicate in unison. For your click-to-call ads or call extension ads, we support a separate Google Ads integration that allows you to bring a script to your Google Ads setup and route calls through a Google forwarding number to a tracking number and match up the calls that come into each number to provide you campaign and keyword level data. So once we've got this all set up and we're routing calls, we're sending the data to our third-party platforms, you're probably going to want to report, analyze, and use some of this data. So on the reporting discussion, I always like to start at this call log. This call log is our stacked chronological view of every call event that we've received. In this table of our call data, we have the ability to filter based on specific views or data sets that we want to see. You can save these filters so they're easily accessible on a regular basis for you. We can also take these filtered criteria that you've established and set up reporting notifications. This can be used to create a daily, weekly, monthly digest of all the call events that meet that criteria that's important to you. Another cool use case of these reporting notifications can be as it happens type alerts. For example, this call came in and we perceive that there's no answer for this inbound lead from our Google My Business page. Imagine if we can take this call, all this caller's information, potentially a recorded voicemail that was left, and as this call occurred, send an email to the sales team with a link to the recording so they can follow up with this missed opportunity as quickly as possible. So in addition to this tabled view of the reporting and these exports, we also have activity reports where all of this table data is going to roll up into the colorful graph format. By default here, we're looking at the calls by source over the last 30 days and how many calls can we attribute to each individual source. In this activity report view, you have the ability to apply the same filters that you did to the call log view. You can also look at this data from a lot of different dimensions. Maybe you want to look at the calls based on the receiving number or the agents that are fielding the calls to see who your top performers are, rather than which channels are generating the phone calls. You can also bring in any of those components that we captured from the tracking code, that session data or the web visitor data, and you can run reports off of those components. So we can look at the calls based on the keyword terms that we've matched to our calls here in this reporting dashboard. You have the ability to export this type of report for a one-time view, or you can schedule this to run at a regular interval as well. As far as managing your users in CallTrackingMetrics, there's no limit to the number of users that you can have here. There's no per seat pricing that's going to impact the cost based on how many people you have accessing this data. We do allow a few different roles off the shelf that allow for varying access level permissions to this account. We also provide access control groups that will allow you to further customize this accessibility and get very customized in exactly who can see what when they log into your CallTrackingMetrics account. So with that, your basic setup of CallTrackingMetrics is essentially complete. There's lots of valuable data to be had with a relatively small time investment and cash investment on the front end, and we'll start to gather all of this data and be able to feed that to you so you can use it to impact your marketing spend. Outside of this basic setup that we've talked about, there's some more complex configurations that are available, and I'll touch on some of those here. For example, we have on some of the plans that we offer the ability to create an unlimited number of sub-accounts. So if you're an agency or a marketing consultant, or you are a corporation that's managing multiple brands under one entity, this segmentation can be appealing. And with these sub-accounts, you have the ability to create a separate account that has its own call log, its own group of users, its own reporting dashboards, and you can have certain users that only have access to their account, and you can have other users that can report on this stuff at a global level. How does it all roll up to one whole? Another feature that I didn't touch on too much was the call distribution. So we talked about this scenario where we route a tracking number to a receiving number. But in addition to that very basic setup, there's a lot of different options that we provide around how you distribute the phone calls. You can build voice menus or set up an auto attendant to prompt the caller to make a key press or to say a specific phrase. And based on that voice menu, we can send the calls to different destinations. We can record these voice menus in your own voice. We can do text to speech, and we've got a few different robot voices that'll read this stuff out for you. And then with that prompt for the caller, we'll define what kind of action that we take with each key press. Do we want to send the calls to different destinations based on this key press? Do we want to trigger other events that happen, like sending a text message as a result of a specific key press here? Or do we just want to use it to collect the data that they're providing in the case of maybe a survey? As callers interact with these voice menus, we can do things in CallTrackingMetrics like tag the calls based on those different key press interactions. And you see some of the tags that have been added here. So this can add another valuable dimension to the data and the reporting that we provide based on what the callers are calling for, what's their intent, and where did they end up. You can imagine if you've got calls coming in from your paid ads and they're electing for option 2 for service instead of 1 for sales, that could be troublesome. You may want to optimize your website and where you're sending your paid visitors. We also support the ability to route calls through a call queue. A call queue is a ring group. It's a group of users that you define, each with their own destination number, and the queue opens up a lot of other capabilities and settings that you can define on how, when, and where we'll distribute calls to these individuals. So the most basic parameter here is, are we routing via a round robin ring pattern in a circular fashion, or are we simultaneously ringing all of these agents at the same time? There's other things here like a no answer scenario. We can daisy chain these queues together. Maybe if we dialed this queue and no one answers after an allotted amount of time, then we want to try these agents. We can also do things like prompting the agent to take the call out of the queue. That way, when we rang all of these agents at once, maybe Kyle's answering calls on his cell phone. We don't want his cell phone voicemail to take the call out of the queue. So we'll prompt him to press 1 to actually connect to the caller that gets sent through this queue. Another great call distribution capability is the geo router. So we have the ability to either prompt the caller to enter their zip code and map your receiving parties based on a zip code and a mile radius around that zip code that they cover, or we can automatically route the calls to your appropriate destinations based on the caller's area code. And the last call distribution capability that I'll highlight here is the smart router. The smart router allows us to define a lot of information that we could potentially already know about this caller as they call in and deviate from our standard call flow that's configured. So maybe based on a previous interaction with this caller, we've identified a specific job title for this person, and we could create a smart routing rule that says if somebody calls in and this job title field is populated with a certain value, then we want to send them to a particular destination rather than going to the main IVR with that repeat call. Another great capability that we support is the ability to trigger different actions or downstream events that happen around calls where specific criteria was met. So the trigger can be configured to run at different times throughout the call, whether it's at the front end of the phone call, whether it's after a call was completed, or whether it's an hour later after we've had a chance to sync with Google and process transcriptions and call recordings and those kinds of things. But with your specific criteria defined here around the call, what kind of things do you want to see for this call? Then you have a lot of different actions that CallTrackingMetrics can run. We've seen some pretty cool use cases using the call triggers, including sending email alerts based on specific fields being mapped, text messages being triggered to send appointment confirmations, and there's triggers about the activity that we can build into the message body here. This also allows us to build very highly customized integrations. So using this kind of criteria to create custom Google Analytics events or to dictate very specific call criteria that needs to be met before we'll sync this call to your Salesforce records. Another feature I'll talk about is the form reactor. So CallTrackingMetrics, in addition to supporting call tracking, we also have the ability to track your form fills. So there's a few different ways that people can interact with the CallTrackingMetrics form reactor. The easiest way to use this is to build the form in CallTrackingMetrics. Let us be the form widget that you put on your website. Building the form in this point and click interface will allow us to spit out this code that you can bring directly to your site to embed that form. With this form, this can be set up to just pass the form fill data to CallTrackingMetrics and maybe send you an email notification, hey, you've got a new web form lead. Here's the information that they filled out. But a more powerful feature here, I believe, is the call routing, the call action around this form. So making it a click-to-call form. This allows us to determine whether we're going to dial the agent first, our sales team, or do we want to dial the customer, the prospect that filled out this form first. Most commonly, people will use this to dial the agent or their sales team first. And with this, we can prompt the agent to make a key press to connect with the web form lead now. If we connect an agent, if they make the required key press, then we'll immediately connect that agent to the form user at the phone number that they provided. There's all kinds of stats out there that say the quicker that we can connect with these form leads, the higher that our chance of converting them to a customer is. And the longer that we wait to connect to them, our chance of converting them significantly drops. And then around all of these form fills, we also have all of that great session data and the source attribution data around those form fills. So which channels are generating the visitors that are filling out the forms, which keyword terms did those form visitors come from? And this is what the form fills look like in the call tracking metrics call log. You see the form entry data that we've collected here. Call tracking metrics also has a robust set of capabilities around text messaging. Just about every tracking number that you purchase in the US and Canada today supports this text messaging feature. In your tracking numbers inventory, you'll be able to quickly identify based on this column which numbers do support this capability. With the text messaging capability, we have the ability to send and receive a text message from any of these numbers. By default, all of the text messages land in this text log. Just like the calls, each text is represented by an individual activity here. We also have the ability to trigger different events based on the presence of these text messages. So this can be used to send an email alert when a new text is received, so your team knows that they can come in to Call Tracking Metrics to reply and engage with this prospect from the tracking number. Or we can even use those triggers to trigger automated responses. So maybe if somebody sent a specific phrase in the body of their text message to this tracking number, we could have an automated response that went out with a link with more information. Another feature that we support around text messaging is the bulk text messaging. So if you have a list of people that have opted in to receive this type of communication, you can upload this list in Call Tracking Metrics and let us send a text blast to these prospects. You might provide a call to action in that blast that says reply with these specific phrases for different interactions, and you can have lots of different automated dialogues based on how people interact with that text blast that you've sent out. Also, in the Call Tracking Metrics auto dialer capability, in that phone system contact center as a service solution, we support an auto dialer. The auto dialer can be integrated for not only call attempts, but text message attempts as well. So you can imagine after we've made 2 call attempts in an auto dialer, and that third attempt, we could send them a text message letting them know that we're going to make one final attempt tomorrow to try and catch up and have them take advantage of the promotion that we're offering. So those are some of the more complex capabilities that we support. Any type of use case on Call Tracking Metrics is going to build on 3 main components. There's going to be a monthly subscription fee, a monthly fee for each tracking number, and then a per minute fee for all the calls that are routed through these tracking numbers. Based on how you're routing the calls, the per minute fee can vary. If we're routing to an external phone system, you're receiving numbers. That's a call forwarding scenario. If you're using Call Tracking Metrics as your phone system and you're fielding these calls within the Call Tracking Metrics dashboard, that's a lower cost per minute across the board. All of these plans that we offer are based on month-to-month terms. On our plans page here that's public facing, we've got a great feature matrix that highlights all the differences between the plans. The marketing plan is your entry point into HIPAA and PCI compliant call tracking. Marketing plan is also where you get access to the unlimited number of sub-accounts. So if you're supporting multiple brands or you're an agency looking to provide access to this for multiple clients under one umbrella, this marketing plan is your entry point there. The contact center plan is your entry point into the most complex integrations that we offer, like Dynamics and Salesforce. Contact center plan is also where you get the auto dialer and the real-time agent dashboard that are particularly handy in that contact center solution. We provide access in a very self-serviceable manner, so you have access to configure just about anything you would ever want to do in Call Tracking Metrics from within any of these accounts, and that includes being able to change your plan. So we're firm believers in having you start small, find some comfort and value in the data that we're providing, and then be able to switch between these plans when it makes sense for you. It's also worth noting that there is a price break on the per number and per minute fees as you go up in these plans. So there is just a volume threshold where it would make sense to potentially take advantage of one of these higher plans just for the cost savings at scale. With any of the plans that we offer, you have access to our support team. You can interact with our live, highly qualified support team through the chat feature within your account. You can call our toll-free number, speak to a live representative on the support team. You can create a ticket here or email to create that ticket and get some engagement from the support team. In addition to these standard support options that are included with any plan, we offer professional services packages where you can purchase a block of hours or a block of time with a dedicated project manager to whom you can delegate a lot of these setup tasks within CallTrackingMetrics. This is also a great resource as you look to set up and configure and roll out on a large scale some of these more complex features that we support. So that's my tour of the CallTrackingMetrics platform today. I hope everyone found the information valuable. I encourage you that if you're curious about any of these features, then you should book some time with our sales team. We'd love the opportunity to review your specific objectives and how we might be able to help.